Greg Varabian, this year's LAIA president, and I'm also a regional design practice leader for HKS Architects. So thank you, everybody. I know I've met quite a few of you in the past, and it's great to get this involvement. And you know, there's a lot of issues that kind of come to mind this year, but we felt that the one which probably had the most visceral impact to the profession and our community had to do with equity and diversity and inclusivity, and at the end, justice. And so we thought that it would be good this year to talk about that as it relates to the university environment. Take that for what it is this year, the university environment, but also the impact to learning, the impact to reaching out to another generation, and also into the communities to increase kind of the diversity within the student body, and to bring another generation of architects into the profession who maybe normally would not do it. So before we kind of do this sort of poll, I did want to remind you that Leslie and Ziba, who you just met, are the co-chairs of our JEDI committee. And I wanted them to just say a few words before we go into this. And also, Barbara Boza is going to talk to you a little bit about ACLA, and then we'll go into the poll, and then we'll go into some more interaction here. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I'll divide this into, Ziva can talk about the Encompass program, which actually featured, we had a panel of students, which was really fascinating and heartbreaking. The committee was formed really in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, and we just heard a lot of pain expressed in our early town halls. There was one person who had just graduated from school, actually, who has been working in firms, talking about the horrible environment that he's worked in that almost has led him to quit. And it was really great to see the whole town hall kind of rally around him. And so the inequities that he may not necessarily have experienced in school certainly hit him kind of square in the face when he got out. And that is, I mean, that's really an impetus for JEDI, is to right those wrongs. That's really what we're trying. You know, it's a big ask, but I think the committee allows people to really take on the tasks that they feel like they can take on and make a difference.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you a little bit about Encompass, which is chapter's main conference to increase diversity in the profession. And our event this year was actually an exceptional event, really, both because of the timing in the history, but also the way that it's evolved. This year, we actually expanded the conference to a 2-day event, and also we partnered with SoCal NOMA, and we offered panels and discussion in 4 areas that got in deeper conversation in terms of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And just quickly, our first panel was focused on workplace and beyond. Our second panel was urban resiliency. Our third panel on the second day, you know, that is really related to this discussion is how it brought students and youth to talk about stress and what's going on today. I know that a number of universities. Here, actually, there was participation from Woodbury, from USC, from East LA College, and from Howard University. So it was a really fun and lively conversation. It was formatted in terms of in a Jeopardy style, and also followed by a workshop that really brainstorm and try to identify actions that we can implement out of all these conversations. So what we are actually doing as a result of this conference is finding ways that we can actually implement initiatives to our future and current JEDI program and also chapters long range plan. Thank you.
Do you have a plan that's shareable, or?
You mean for Encompass? We do actually, but the program is actually online. You can access that, and we also have a recording of it. If anybody has not participated, you can definitely access that.
No, I meant the JEDI committee, if there was an action plan.
Leslie, you're muted.
We're actually in the process of putting that plan together. It's been really, really quickly moving. We went from, a conversation with Carlo in January about why Encompass is kind of the only EDI thing that we do, to COVID striking, changing the format of Encompass, really looking at things other than architects of color don't have any work. And here are all the great architects of color who are out there, to really tackling, like Ziva said, issues of urban resiliency, reaching out to students. And then the murder of George Floyd happened, and there was a lot of pain expressed and a lot of interest expressed, and we need to do something. And so we've been moving really quickly. The first couple of months was really focused on getting Encompass done. And now we are moving forward with a bunch of different things. We just talked earlier today about kind of putting all of our thoughts together and making that available. So probably within the next month, that plan will be available for everybody.
Oh, hi everyone, it's Barbara here. I'm just gonna really briefly bring you up to speed on the AIALA. It's our nonprofit, and so we'll be launching that. You have access to the website, but we're very excited, and it's Architecture for Communities Los Angeles. And just to give you a sense of what our mission is, it's really to inspire all people to embrace the value of architecture and design of Los Angeles community. And we're focused on raising public awareness regarding the role of architecture and design. We're creating outreach programs to discuss the profession and inspire, really starting from K through 12 students, but really all students, really looking at that next generation. So the idea is this is a much more externally focused, whereas AIA, we're obviously very focused on the profession, but it's really to recognize that design can be impacted across all of Los Angeles. So the idea is to engage Los Angeles communities implementing collaborative activities and conversation opportunities for architects and the general public. So we're, just to give you a little bit of the structure, ACLA, which is our acronym for Architecture Community Los Angeles, AIALA, separate legal entities, and we do have 2 independent boards, but a good percentage, 60% of the board for ACLA is part of AIA. So really excited to find a way that we can further engage with you all. It does allow us to look at additional funding sources as a nonprofit. We just had a really amazing call with LA Unified, really touched us in terms of the challenges many of the instructors, many of these students have in terms of gauging and what are some of the needs. And then also, just as Tatiana mentioned, the 2x8 exhibit is coming up. So we'll make sure that you're all connected when we send out more information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Barbara.
Oh, and sorry, really quick, I'm gonna probably go off camera and mute because I got a double duty on another meeting, but then I'll slip back in. So just in case somebody asks me something I don't respond, I'll be back.
We'll just assign you. Okay. So I think before, I'm going to have Wade in a few minutes here kind of introduce a series of questions that we also kind of prepared for more of a kind of a conversation discussion piece. But there's a short poll that we thought we would do because it helps us kind of have some instant kind of information in these conversations rather than just talking a lot. So Carlo or Will or
It will be
Steve,
Will.
I don't know who's, or Tibby, who's going to open the poll.
Will is.
Okay. So
Well, here are some questions that we're curious about, and you're probably curious about your compatriots as well. So what's the diversity of your faculty, the diversity of students, and let's just see how everybody stacks up. So if you could fill that, all the faculty fill that out, we'll get it tabulated and get back to you.
What constitutes diversity in this?
I think you can define that for yourself in terms of that's a tough question because there are minorities and there are people of color and they're not necessarily the same thing. So I'll let you define it yourself, and then as we get into the discussion, we'll sort it out. Is that okay, Greg?
yeah, I think so. I think it's probably a place to start. I think the broader question is really kind of faculty, design instructors, whatever, that are Black or brown, that are actually, helping to inspire another generation of young architects to come through the practice. That's how I would define it personally, but. Will, are you seeing how far we are in terms of responses so we can either close it or?
I think everybody's responded.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll do the next one.
So this is the response, basically. So it's 46% between 20 and 50, 38 less than 20, and only 15 more than 50%. Do you want to launch the second one, Will?
Okay.
This is the results, I think, right?
Correct.
Let's see, polling.
And this is students' diversity.
Yeah, I have a question here because this is where it gets tricky for us. So 60% of our students are international, which technically does none of them count. So it's only about domestic students, right?
Well, that's a good question.
No, I'm
tricky
telling you
question.
because every time we have accreditation, all that, this is an issue that comes up because again, if you walk around our building, because again, we have people from 42 different countries, it's incredibly diverse, but when you parcel out only with domestic students, it's a different equation. Again, for the purpose of the AIA, I don't know which one you're interested in.
Maybe,
because
yeah.
it will produce two different answers.
Let's do domestic for now to keep it simple for everybody. Yeah, yeah.
We won't blame you.
Yeah.
No. I think we all have to be super transparent and honest about it. It's the only way we can fix it.
So less than 20% is 17%, 20 to 50 is 33%. It seems like most of the schools have more than 50% of the students diverse. Okay, great, thank you.
I forgot, how many do we have, Will?
Those were the only two questions that we have on the poll.
Okay.
Polls.
Okay. All right. Wade, I think we're going to open up kind of the other stuff that gets a little more specific. And I think if you could put those on the screen, Will, for Wade, it'll be easier. And we'll maybe let's kind of tackle kind of one of these at a time. But these, these are kind of the main.
Yeah, so the first question is about recruitment. We all know this is really difficult. Our firm tries to recruit as many kids from the communities of color, and we do okay, but the numbers are small. So how are you guys doing with it?
This is open discussion time now.
So I'll just kick it off. This is Ingalil from Woodbury, and over 90% of our students are local, so very different from the SCI-Arc demographic. And 75% identify as minority, so that's how we define it. Gender also, I would argue, is an underrepresented group in architecture. So when we talk about faculty, I think that's also something that should be included. So in terms of outreach and recruitment, one of the things, and I have to really thank, it was AIALA that put us together with LAUSD, and we now have a multi-pronged relationship with the LAUSD. And as an example, we're on a group that looks at their curriculum, and so we send a lot of our faculty to meet with the faculty at LAUSD. And when we talk about recruitment, we're talking K through 12. So we really see that as part of the pipeline and breaking barriers down. One program we started last year, I just sent to Carlo and Will. We got a national award for it. It was a STEM mentorship award. We paired our alumni, 5 of our Woodbury alumni, with 20 LAUSD STEM Hollywood Academy students. And it was an 8-month program that met once a month over an 8-month period. So it was a very intensive program. Heather Flood, our chair of architecture, ran it together with Catherine Roussel. And I'm proud to say that 3 of the students in that program ended up applying to architecture school. So I thought that was a really great program. And it wasn't just Woodbury, but just architecture school in general. And I just thought that was very exciting. What was it? Michelle Obama said that how can you get students of color into architecture if they don't even know what architecture is? So we also have a middle school program, and I think that's really important. We have reached out to the Fernandeño Tataviam tribe, which is our local tribe, that the land on which Woodbury exists used to belong to this tribe. And so we're setting up a mentorship program now with that Native American tribe. And that's, I think, really exciting and unique. And we're offering complete tuition, 100% tuition discount to the members of this tribe. We also host a community college annual exhibition. Many of the members of our community college group are here. ELAC and GCC, Santa Monica, College of the Canyons has now become one of our biggest feeders. And what we do is we want to celebrate those students and give them a sort of public showcase. So we've now 3 years in a row hosted an exhibition where we invite the community colleges to exhibit their students' work together. And it's also a really wonderful way to get all the community colleges together. We had 11 community colleges last year that were celebrated in that way. And then finally, I just want to mention we have a free summer high school program. It's free that we offer to LAUSD and NOMA students this summer. And then we offered social justice scholarships. And these are students who are underrepresented as well as fighting for justice issues. And so we offered 13 scholarships this year in the School of Architecture. So that's a new initiative that we've started. So I'll stop there, but those are some of the things that we do.
Thank you. Anybody else want to sort of get into this here before we go to the next one?
Couldn't find my my mute button. From East Los Angeles College, if I could just add, and Ingwell has been one of our biggest supporters of our program. I've been at the helm here for 15 years, and I just got to tell a quick story. It's just too bad he's not here this evening. I kind of expect it now. 5 years ago, I had a chance meeting from mentor-mentee with Joshua Foster, and I think everybody here knows who Joshua is. I had no idea how important that relationship was going to be personally, as well as what it's done for our program. What we've done for our local community in East Los Angeles, serving predominantly, we're 87% Hispanic, and in the high 90s or mid 90s in terms of overall minority. I've wanted to, it's been my goal is to expand our success with our community and share our community and grow our community. Because I don't want our students to think that they're in an incubator or they're balkanized. And it's been my push to reach more into South Central, into the Black community. And Josh, through his advancement through the SC Master's Program and getting involved, creating a NOMA chapter at SC, created this connection with myself personally and with NOMA. And of course, NOMA SoCal became part of with East LA College, and we now are hosting their summer boot camp, as well as until it got cut off by COVID, they were doing a monthly Saturday camp, and we were looking forward to that relationship, building more and pushing our brand to help provide, from our perspective, a pathway, to the profession of architecture and into the universities. The one thing I want to add to our commitment and so forth is we offer an incredible array of things that most two-year schools do not offer. Our extracurricular activities include, obviously, very involved with the AIA, whether it was the original 1 to 2, and of course currently with the 2x8. And so competing with the universities is very important for our students to have that accessibility, and of course the networking that goes with that. Every one of for almost all of you, that are the deans or chairs of your respective schools, there's some level of relationship with us and your programs. We're actually developing an even more, seems like a very common pathway now, even to UCLA as we move along. And so for us, we've become that alternative pathway, or maybe the only pathway for many of our students to ever even learn about what architecture is and to get to that next level. I want to share that with a bigger community, and I haven't necessarily always had the support from my college to understand that. Of course, with this current situation that has occurred, it's brought more focus to this. It's unfortunate how it's had to happen, but it is happening. And we are pushing this. The other thing we do is we are doing dual enrollments. We are getting on high school campuses. We're actually teaching our classes, but it's got its limitations. And as a community college, we don't have, as was stated earlier by someone else that's in a public institution, we don't have a lot of financial support. And I'm telling you now, from what I'm getting for next year in terms of our budget impacts, it's going to be devastating. Luckily for us as a program, I'll finish with this, we've raised about $50,000 a year as a department, not with the college's help. And we offer out about $50,000 in scholarships, awards, financial support. And I'll say this one here with this last question about how are we preparing students to understand the design challenges. Actually, at our level, oftentimes they educate us, and we become very aware because most of these students are facing some level of housing insecurities, transportation, and healthcare. As I stated earlier, they don't have an environment to learn in, and closing down the school has taken away that one safe place that they had to be able to prepare themselves. So that's in a nutshell, again, for us.
This is Milton. Can everybody hear me? Great work that Michael's doing, and Ingela and so many people on the call. I think for us at USC, recruitment outreach and mentorship starts with the pedagogy of our program. So we're moving through a fairly comprehensive analysis and transformation of all of our academic programs to really focus on the specificities of diversity. So Black, Latinx, Indigenous, and people of color in our bachelor's program and other programs. So I think it starts for us with, we're educating citizen architects. That's what we say that we're doing, and we're beginning to cascade that that overall pedagogy into all of our academic programs. Recruitment, we have pre-college programs under one umbrella now with our summer explorations program. We have a 2-week version, a 4-week version of that, that attracts students from all over the country and sometimes out of the country. We're building a high school enrichment program on our campus. We'll launch that next fall jointly with LAUSD. So we have a really good partnership emerging with them. And we're looking more at data and research to target and to have outreach to specific high schools and communities. I think the one other important thing for us is really I don't think we all need to have or should have a one-size-fits-all approach to the pedagogy of how we integrate diversity into our programs. I think that we're all very successful because we have diverse academic and research focus for our programs. And I think there's no one way to achieve advancement on dealing with systemic racism. We need the same robust debate and intellectual discourse to execute that as we do with all the other things that we try to approach within our design program. So I think first and foremost, our recruitment strategy is to say, we're not just recruiting you because you're Black, we're recruiting you because the profession needs you more than you need the profession. And we need your perspective and your experience. And unlike the baggage claim when you go to the airport, we don't want you to leave your identity at the door and then come in to assimilate within a discipline and a practice that's not changing relative to the experiences, the diversity experiences that we're seeking from new people, particularly those that are underrepresented coming to our profession. So I think it forces us, is forcing us, and it should force all of us to say, how is the practice changing to adapt to more Black students, more Latinx students, more people of color, more Indigenous students who are coming with more emphasis on social impact, but an equivalent interest in design excellence. And if we're not changing our schools, if we're not changing our pedagogy, if we're not changing the practice, but just asking people to assimilate, I don't think we're going to be successful. So I put that out there because I think it's a challenge we've not succeeded at, but we're in the process. And I think I say that as a work in progress, but that's kind of how we are approaching these issues.
Hi, this is Lauren. Hi. We are, of course, we always say we're State University, and so we have to look to other strategies in addition to the ones that you all have talked about. And I think we're looking for opportunities for more community engagement. So while it's vitally important to bring people to our campuses, it's equally important for us to go out to communities. Of course, during COVID, it's especially challenging, but we're managing to do it gradually. I'd say that our landscape architecture department is particularly engaged in this. They have a big project in South Central. And because, as somebody already said, in many cases, kids have never even heard of our professions. And it's not just, you know, hearing about it, but it's meeting young people who are involved with it and beginning to learn that these professions can help them actually improve their own communities. You know, it's very much a kind of outward orientation. And anyway, so this is a strategy that we expect will be quite effective.
Can everybody hear me? Just having to echo some of my colleagues, which I think they're expressing pretty much the right spirit, and Michael and Ingalil and Ingalil Woodbury has been ahead of the curve in all this, and I think you need to be recognized, and I think we all should be learning from what they're doing. But I think some of the things that Milton has mentioned to me is crucial. To give a little bit of larger context, I think this is of course not the first time that a group like people like us is talking about this, but clearly what has been happening in the summer and the moment of reckoning that we are confronting as a society and as a country, of course, has put this rightfully so in hyperdrive. So for us, it has been a moment of deep psychoanalysis of who we are as an institution, and to understand our shortcomings and our failures, to understand that we haven't done enough and how we can improve that moving forward. So in relation to these things, I think we do like some of the some similar programs that all the other schools do during the summer. We high school, the DID, which fortunately we have support from foundations, and we are almost every student get a scholarship or is free somehow. We have been working with LAUSD as well to doing pop arcs, what we call it like a 2 or 3 day workshop with different high schools, and trying to keep doing more of that. We are starting a multi-year partnership with NOMA SoCal, but also has been to reflect from the board, even at the board level, and to put everything on the table, as Milton was saying, to reshape the curriculum and what we teach. And in our particular case, it has been how to figure it out, whatever speculative radical agenda we proclaim to have, how that can be synthetic with the idea of a social radical agenda for the growth and progress in those terms. So in terms of recruitment and outreach and commitment and mentorship, I think we're doing similar things that all the other schools are doing, but at the same time trying to analyze why it hasn't been quite working. So on the recruitment side, one of the things that we are looking very carefully is how we make it more a two-way street. It's not just for us to reaching out to communities to recruit the students, but also how we can be of service of those communities, how we can collaborate with those communities. There is an issue there that we all try to figure out. The other thing I will add is, I think conversation like this one is very useful, because of course each institution have their own agenda and their own desire, but I think this is going to be a collective effort that requires maybe much more coordination and collaboration than we've done in the past, and how we expand the value of architecture as a culture. One thing I will add, and I don't know if my colleagues will share this view, but one of the things that to me is important is how we start to reach out and to talk to the families. It's not enough to reach out to the young students that they may incline to go into architecture or some creative field, but also to get the family to support them and to understand the value of that. This is something that we talking with our students and talking with potential students, we find that this is an issue too, in their own internal discussion with their families about the possibility to get a higher education, and if architecture or humanities at large is the right path. So I think there is a larger issue too to how we communicate to the larger community about the value of architecture and how architecture could be an agent for good and for change. And I think that is a lifetime commitment, and as Milton says, it's a work in progress. And as I said many times in this context, to our faculty and students. These have to be a lifetime commitment of the faculty, staff, students, and the institution. It's not something that is going to be solved overnight, and it's going to take, it's a big mountain to climb. But I don't know, part of the issue, I think, is if we are capable, at least in Southern California, to all institutions to work more collectively and to create more moments of crossover in which we push for architecture as a value, and how that can be related to an issue of equity and inclusion and the progress for Black, Latinx, BIPOC, and all the things that architecture can be part of it. So I don't know, I come to a meeting like this with honestly way more questions and way more doubts and trying to figure it out more than come with any possible solution, because some of these solutions, I think we all been working this for a while and for many years, and clearly it's not quite working. So I think it's all of us. I think internally we are revisiting pretty much every angle from curriculum to every aspect that we can think of to figure it out what is the right path to move forward. Anyway.
If I could just add one thing, I thought is so eloquent, Hernan. Thank you so much. You know, one of the things we've been thinking a lot about is this pivot that we've all had to make into the virtual world in terms of learning and pedagogy. It's probably not temporary. It's probably never, I could be wrong, in some ways I hope I'm wrong, but I actually think we will never completely go back to how it was pre-COVID. And I think one of the challenges for us is to try to figure out, if that's true, try to figure out how to use this new mode of interaction to achieve the kind of positive messaging that I'm sure we are all you know, searching for. And that's one of the things that we've been very focused on, is that this is not temporary, that we have to try to figure this out in a way that is going to continue even once we go back to so-called conventional classes. Because I think what also sometimes people overlook is that even once that is possible, the conventional class will no longer look what it used to look like. You know, with the distancing and the masks and other things. And that may be with us for quite some time. I mean, we don't know. But I think that the real challenge is, in terms of creating this powerful messaging for how architecture can make a difference in many communities, we have to try to figure out how to, and maybe it's just possible that this thing that we were sort of driven towards by this pandemic could actually be in some ways an advantage in the long run to reaching a larger audience and to empowering this message in new ways. And I think this idea of collaborating with each other is also, I think, a very powerful thought. And I thank the AIA for having this conversation, because I think, I mean, it's a cliche, but together we're bigger than, you know, just a bunch of separate institutions. And, you know, in our own very small way, we're reaching out to different places. I mean, Milton may or may not know this, but we have Dr. Sean Harper from USC's Center for Race and Equity is one of our advisors to help figure out not only internally how to have a shift in how we think about the world and the messages we put into it, but also, you know, in terms of our pedagogy. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that this is not just a temporary situation that we kind of just have to get through until we can go back to how it was. I don't believe how it was is coming back anytime soon, and we have to figure that out.
A quick add to that, Jeff, which I think is a really super important point. Like they all say, I mean, never let the good crisis go to waste. This one is a collide of multiple crises. If we think about, for example, after 9/11, we never went back to travel in the way that we were. And one of the silver linings, I think, about the medium that we are, it has a certain kind of horizontality and democratization, which is pretty cool. One simple thing is our high school program, the idea in the summer, we have the largest class that we ever have because it was online and it was available to way more people. So we doubled the size this year because of that. So I think there is a lot of interesting opportunities here that we should learn, and we try to keep track of what is the positive thing that is coming for this virtual learning. Sorry, sorry that
I'd like to speak to the last one of the issue of college life. And I think that's where, besides recruitment and all those other things, I think that's really where Otis College is. And speaking of kind of everything happening at once, we're a small college of art and design, and COVID hit in mid-March, and we had a new president in May, and we had a new provost in July. So these people are brand new, but our president, I'll say as all this was happening, our president stepped right up and came up with a 5-point plan. And so we're looking at in our institutional structure and environment across the board, across all the departments. And his 5-point plan is very significant. We're going to audit our college on diversity, equity, and inclusion from an outside auditor, and also creating an executive role that would be a vice president, a DEI vice president, and everyone, students, faculty, staff, and trustees will do mandatory anti-racism training. Also gave $1.5 million in aid for culturally diverse and underserved students this year. So we stepped up with support, financial support, and support for students to attend our pre-college, underrepresented students to attend our pre-college Summer of Art program. The chairman of our board of trustees, Maylee Nay, gave us a $1 million gift to support this plan. So we are, the college is moving forward with all those things, and also started a diversity, equity, inclusion council that is engaging the college in community building and changing events throughout the year. And I can't speak of it today, but it's happening tomorrow. So tomorrow the DEI Council will be presented to us and engage the entire community in breakout sessions and facilitated by that council. And that's kind of across the board, faculty, staff, administration.
May I make a quick comment?
Please do.
Okay, I didn't know if I've had access. So I think one of the main things our tiny little school does to foster inclusion is we don't have any admission requirements except for a high school diploma. And I've just seen that over the years that has proved very instrumental into several otherwise would not be into architecture people to get into the profession. So my question is there any migration or any change in the policy of your larger schools toward admitting students? Because I think minority students that I've had experience with are fearful of a long drawn out admission process. They're certainly fearful of the economic impact with their families. And by the way, Hernan, I think dealing with families is just a spectacular idea. So is there any change, any like sea change coming in that area for you guys?
What happened at the CSU this year was that because kids are unable to take the SAT exam, each of the campuses was given control, if you will, of their admissions process. And so what we're doing is, it's called something like the multi-factor calculation. And so it's GPA, and then they add in, and they actually add value to your community participation and other activities. And they've already been running the numbers, and they find that, for instance, for women applicants in the STEM disciplines, the numbers are going up. And so, to Jeff and others' points about, we may never go back exactly to how it was. And that I would say, there's, I think as humans, we're often looking for silver linings, that there is something positive that's coming out of this, creating a process that is perhaps more fair admissions process. So, and we don't know what's going to happen, next year, but SAT, people have been complaining about the SAT for a long time as being biased and really not an accurate measure of success. So that's
certainly not in architecture anyway.
Thank you, Bill, for bringing,
okay.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Bill, thank you for bringing that up. I think given the inherent biases in the education system, and I think it was Milton who also talked about, we can't simply ask students of color to assimilate, but really question agency and what we identify as excellence. I think that is has to be questioned. I think a lot of people refer to that. One of the things that we've done at Woodbury, we have what we call the Bridge program that recognizes that there are students with low GPAs, and we bring them in, and we provide a lot of support for them. And we are, like the CSUs, using different metrics. And I mean, it seems to me that every institution can then determine for themselves what those metrics are. But I do think that, for example, we just launched a computer science program in the School of Architecture. And we're really reaching out to students who missed the math boat in high school. And that's a lot of students who, would not otherwise be able to enter into these high technology fields, given the inherent bias of the public educational system that they've been part of. So I want to thank Bill for bringing that up.
That sounds like a great program.
Yes, Mark Erickson is chairing that. He's very passionate about it.
Cool.
Yeah, I think, William, what you bring in is an important point, and we are evaluating all that in terms of the admission process, because we fully understand to really produce the change that we want, that also have to change. We have to be evaluated in a completely different way, take into account the backgrounds and so on. So we are working to figure out a much more flexible and fair admission program.
Thanks for the question. It's very important. I think we are, within our pre-college programs, we're more and more linking to the infrastructure at the university across all the university's pre-college programs to provide, to centralize the core academic support, math, science, writing, while students are in our pre-college programs, or before or after they're in our pre-college programs, so that we're leveraging the university-wide resources for some of those basic subjects that we want mastery in. I do think that, and we as a private institution, we want as much freedom and latitude within a holistic review process as we can get. So I would say that we'd like to be able to downplay the standardized test scores where it makes sense, and where it makes sense, depending on the high school, to look at those as well as other metrics. So we like the flexibility. What I will say, coming from University of Michigan before being dean here, is I think that one of the things that we could all perhaps collaborate on is the necessity to to be able to hold firm on the affirmative action decisions that have come down all the way from Bakke to the Michigan cases. We're going to face now, for the first time, a Supreme Court very shortly that could overturn affirmative action all the way back to Bakke, affecting not only public institutions, but private institutions. I think that's a real and present danger. And I think if you look at Michigan, Berkeley, University of Texas, not taking race into account doesn't get the job done, particularly for Black and Latino students.
Is anybody watching the debate?
No.
I'm recording it,
Recording
but I
it.
don't know. I don't know if I can stomach.
It's on in the
I'm in.
background. It's on in the background, and you will not be able to stomach it because our guy is doing what he does. So he's yelling and screaming and saying the same thing he always says.
Yeah,
Not missing anything.
I don't want to bring everybody down because we have a positive conversation, but I honestly don't know how we're gonna do anything if this thing remains in power.
That's a big issue, that's for sure.
Very big.
It's a big issue.
So we have about 20 minutes. We have until like 7:30 in your company. And I would like to throw on the table the same old question. We have had several of this academic summit, and the purpose of the summit is always to bridge basically the gap between academia and the profession. We keep hearing the same things, you know, even at Encompass, for instance, we had a session completely dedicated to students, and all we heard was that they feel not prepared for the professional world. They feel like they can only count on internship basically to fill this gap. And especially this year with the lack of internship, they feel really at loss. Of course, there was a lot of more anxiety than you would imagine in a regular year, and a lot of stress. Students feel very stressful, very anxious and everything else. So provided that we have you guys as the academia and the AIA as, you know, representative of the profession, what will be one or two, and in this climate, what will be one or two, let's bring it back, one initiative basically that will help, you know, basically start like putting the first brick towards this bridge that we want to build. How can AIA, for instance, provide resources to your students to make sure that they feel like they have a better knowledge of architecture and the profession? I understand that we can talk about internships and mentorships, but in this year of you know, deprivation, so to speak, what can we do? What would be one single thing that we could implement maybe in the next 6 months, especially given the fact that you guys are starting sessions right now, be it virtual or what?
Carlo, you mentioned it. I would say internships. I was speaking to Barbara Bester the other day, and it was Deborah Gerard who spoke to her, two amazing power mentors of mine, but they both felt that it's their responsibility to hire students, and they're taking a risk, and it was incredible. But I think that would be a really important message. You know, micro internships, there's work, you know, ways of being creative and thinking of how to bring students into a work environment. So at Woodbury, we require all of our students to do work experience as part of, in order to graduate. And just as you said, I think it's really, I just think that's, it's the practice, is the profession's responsibility to share some of that burden. So that's for me would be the number one thing.
I wonder, Carlo, a couple of things. One of the things I always think about it, which is peculiar about architecture, if we take historically architecture, engineer, medicine, and law as historical professions that exist, right? We are the only one left that we still, there is a general umbrella that defines architecture, right? If you're a law or an engineer or a doctor, you have a certain expertise. So I think part of the challenge with this is, and again, I'm speaking right now in the context of the school, part of it is that part of the problem, I think the relation between the discipline and the professional, I would argue, is that architecture is so subjective and there are so many angles how it can be, how can be attacked, how you can be part of it. So I agree with Inga in terms about how the professional responsibility and how we can integrate those programs more and more. One of the things that to me was super interesting in the conversation with the students and the faculty on the issue of equity and inclusion during the summer is the whole issue of the license component and how everybody think that this is something, there are different views. There are people who should think we should get rid of it and we should be like in other countries, another profession, and you finish your education and the day after you can go and take the exam or not. That I think is an important conversation because I think we still have this system of hierarchies in the profession, which I think it is part of the issue in the long run with equity and inclusion as well. Because as we know, the internship, I think while you're a student is great, but after you graduate, that should change. So I will say, Carlo, one thing I will ask is I think we all collectively need to discuss the whole issue of a license and what it means to be prepared for the profession or not. And of course, on my part, I would be willing, and we should be willing as a school to take more responsibility in terms of the curriculum than we do to prepare them if we were to go that path. But I think to put the whole issue for license on the table as a very open conversation about the profession, to me, this is something that the AIA can help. And I think the schools and the AIA talking and then with NCARB and so on, to have, I think we need to have a very big conversation about that issue because I think that's part of the anxiety that it creates, the process that it creates, how long it's gonna take you until you have the job or the viable. And again, then everybody can approach architecture in so many ways, which is kind of tricky because not everybody wants to operate and do the same, be the same kind of architect. We see more and more in our graduates, they go into other fields that they apply their architectural knowledge into others. Sometimes have to do their own interest, but more often than not, sometimes it's because there is a kind of a flexibility or a speed in those paths that sometimes they think in architecture is too long or too overwhelming. So I think without giving a particular frame, in general, I think the whole license process is something that we should discuss.
Thank you, Nan.
Yes,
If I, no,
okay.
go ahead. Ladies first, especially from the beach. We got to let the dirtbags talk first.
Always at.
No, I'm a former Long Beach person, so that's why I say that. I love your school.
I think that I remember having this conversation as an undergraduate just a few years ago. So that we always somehow set profession and education in opposition, like they're two things that must be bridged, as opposed to something that's sort of cut from the same fabric. I think is one thing that we can rethink. And like Hernan had said as well, as a couple other people regarding sort of structural and systemic changes, we have graduates that find architecture the least desirable profession to go into with the skill set that they're provided with. They feel they have much more opportunity to build their portfolios, to engage with community, to have social impact outside of the profession and therefore the licensure in architecture. And as Barbara was talking about, going into the community and talking about the relevance of architecture is critical, because if we don't structurally find ways to bring in these diverse voices, we are talking about the undermining of the validity of the discipline in its entirety. So this isn't really optional at this point. If you can imagine a future with very few diverse voices, then the relevance of the architectural practice with the licensing, et cetera, it becomes kind of a conversation in a very tight little group of people who all believe their work is very relevant. The students are saying it's much more interesting to go into media. It's much more interesting to go into film. It's much more interesting going to city and regional planning, to go into cities and use my skill there than to enter into this extremely hierarchical licensing, of course, profession that isn't offering me very quickly when they're used to having everything user-friendly, on-demand, and very fast. So, you know, I think bridging this so there is no bridge, that we really work seamlessly. And I think the AIA could provide a platform also seeing Southern California as an ecosystem of architectural education. Is it possible that one of my students in human experience design takes a studio at SciArc and a skills development class at Woodbury and goes into the community colleges and works as well? Can we get that kind of sort of Southern California ecosystem of education that naturally draws on the resources of practitioners to sort of lead those initiatives? I think that would change a lot of the way how this diverse community starts to see the relevance of architecture, not only as something that gives to them, but as something that they are shaping and contributing to.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think that what we're touching on is this sort of lack of fluidity, right, between the educational experience and the opportunities for work, you know, post-graduation. And of course, one of the things that is going to be changing faster and faster is just the technology that is being used to create buildings and who's using it. You know, it's not just architects, it's contractors. And in some ways, the contractors are getting ahead of the architects. And it could be that in not that many years in the future, the technology will make it possible. I mean, it already is for a small team of people to do the kinds of projects that used to require, you know, hundreds, right, to do. And so I don't think we as a profession have completely understood that. And I don't think we've completely embraced what the future might look like for architects. And that's where some of the discontinuity is occurring, I think, between academic experience and the, if you want to call it, the professional experience. I think we have to cast a much wider net. And I think, as many of you have already said, the messaging is not only to the next generation of students, but it's to their families and beyond, right? Like how we put greater value on what architects bring to the table for a quality of life. And I think that's also one of the reasons why perhaps graduates are going into other fields. Not only is the money perhaps more an attractor, but this idea of making a difference, right? In people's lives, in communication in general. And so I think, and I know this doesn't really answer your question, Carlo. I'm sorry, because I don't really have the answer, but I just think that we need to tell the story of architecture in new and different ways to communities and audiences we probably haven't spoken to so effectively in the past.
I think the future of, oh, sorry.
No,
Michael.
who is that? Is that you, Dean Curry? I always will.
No. I yield the floor.
You're too good. I think when I was looking at this perspective, you know, we're historically a vocational program that's transitioned into this pathway, you know, obviously to the various universities. So we have to be able to, as a 2U program, meet the needs of as Jeff stated, as technology and the manner in which we practice the skills that we need have transitioned over time. When we leave school, depending on how we were trained or even in internships, we got to go back and learn more, whether it's Revit and BIM and other ways that we're presenting our you know, code and everything else that goes with it. So we always have that place, and then we are this place that, you know, that's been championing for the last 15 years to reach to a community of people that don't know what architecture is, and now we're complicating it to a certain degree because as Hernan says, it's a, you know, a very vast opportunity to get into the creative fields. And I think Heather's comments, you know, require maybe some more discussion later on, the whole idea of ecology and this cross-disciplining with each other so students get access to the various skills they need. But I want to talk real fast here about what we try to bring to the table. And I don't want to bite the hand that feeds us because of my relationship with everybody here and what we're trying to give our students as pathways to the different schools. I've always revered SciArc for their position, and Hernan has been, more than anybody in that leadership, has been very, very clear and articulate in that. And then you have, well, a Pomona or San Luis Obispo that has their perspective. When students are choosing schools, this is a really difficult task. Is the school meet my needs? Can I meet the, you know, the responsibility and requirements to get into those schools? It's such a difficult thing. But one of the things that I want to say that Angelo referred to, while internships is an incredibly great idea, it's not always sustainable. And when the economy goes through its ebbs and flows, we can't, from a pedagogical standpoint, always count on that to counter or add the necessary skills that students. The question is, I'm going to school for 5 years if I come out of high school. I'm going to school for 7 or 8 years if I go to a community college program. And start looking at the metrics on how many students that are going into the profession now start at a community college and why that has to happen. But I'll tell you this, for certain community colleges with certain programs, that added skill set, and I don't know, Wade, if you've even checked in with Eric Reyes, who just recently started at Wade's firm, but he walks into a university and then to the workforce with a completely different skill set that the universities aren't providing. And I talked to some of my colleagues at ELAC, you know, those guys that are from the 60s. I'm a person from the 70s. I've got Chet Whittam, for example, who works as an adjunct for us. And he talks about his experiences at USC and the skills that he was provided. We look at that 7, 8 years of a transfer, or even now the 5 years, and try to justify 5 years in a profession that pays at start 50 to 60 grand at best. And the students are saying, I'm trying to get into this profession, yet I don't have the skills to make enough money to even pay 1 year's tuition. You know, SC's over 50 grand, right? That's something that we need to address. Is the 5-year program, I said this, you know, at Encompass, and I don't mean this in a negative way. I'm a byproduct of a 5-year program. But is it providing, why do we need 5 years? Or can we dedicate a year that brings more practical skills or some level of skills? You know, 3 years of topic studios without a thesis anymore. I don't know. Or, so I can finish with this as a selfish plug, and I've been thankful to all the schools here. At one day or one time or another, you guys have referred a student and said, look, you're not ready for us. There's a community college pathway. Look at ELAC as a potential pathway back to our school. And we appreciate that because that's a sign of respect. But we do come from a different perspective. I'm not going to have a philosophy and mission that goes beyond establishing a foundation and making sure that foundation meets the minimum quals and we get that articulation so the students are getting credit for their work. And then when they go to 3rd year, 4th and 5th year, as they do, now they're ready to perform in your guys' programs. Or, you know, we have a lot of students that go to Long Beach now, and a former colleague of mine, Eduardo Perez, obviously, is a very, very, very profound professor down there, does an incredible job. So anyway, I throw that out there. I guess, you know, we continue to look for your support. We need help. We want to get out into the communities. I know we serve a population that you want, that you can't necessarily get because they're not ready for university life. I mean, most of our students are not freshmen out of high school. Most of our kids now are in their mid-20s. They've gone through life and they're finding out the sacrifice and dedication, rigor of our program. They wouldn't be ready right out of high school. And many kids that you do get, you know, you get them. There's also high levels of attrition. And you know, we're there obviously to bridge that with you all. But, you know, it's a very valuable argument. And it was stated 2 years ago at our first meeting that we had, and I don't think we ever addressed it. How can we as institutions, academic institutions, support the needs of the profession? Because lastly, last comment, the metrics say that the number of licensed architects in the future is going to be devastatingly low. And until we can change the entire build community, and I want to thank Ingelo for this. Last year, we had a joint meeting with NCARB, NAAB, and universities and colleges. In fact, everybody from San Luis Obispo, the new school, was there. And is there going to be a bigger change in that pathway? And then, of course, if you guys all are aware, the State License Board of California just sent out a reminder that there's still a pathway to profession of licensure without with a 2-year degree, so a community college, and without having an accredited degree. But it's only good for California, right? So NCARB or NAAB would have to be, somehow involved in all this. Anyway, my point. Sorry, Dean Curry.
I don't have anything to add after that. I think for us at USC, we're training. The paradox, I think, of where we are today with practice and the profession, the discipline is we're leveraging what I hope, and for us is what's becoming a more diverse and interesting constellation of knowledge within the domain of architecture and design and related disciplines within the degree programs that we have. We're leveraging that to train students for working in practices. And amongst those practices is the traditional design architecture office. But amongst the other practices within that constellation are multidisciplinary firms, very small, very nimble, with all kinds of affiliations that require, in my view, in some cases, depending on the student's aspiration and impact they want to make, a multidisciplinary education. So a Research One platform makes a lot of sense for that, where they're coming and for 5 years, they're immersing themselves in an intellectual milieu that they'll never get again, in any other setting. And so that's a distinctive character, and we have to figure out how to finance that so that it's accessible for everyone, for sure. But I think as well, I think the practices, we have to be expansive in terms of what we're preparing students for. And I think we have to be open to the fact that there's a power dynamic within traditional architectural practice that has been unwelcome to women and underrepresented persons. And so to go into an environment where the power differential is so huge, talking about first generation students, or we have 20% Pell eligible students. We have 5.8% African American and 20% Latinx students. Moving into an environment that's very homogenous, where the ascension to partner or ownership to have equity in a firm just doesn't seem plausible, given the mentors and the relationships they're seeing and where they're seeing others go within the firm. So I think that dynamic, obviously it can't change overnight, but I think we have to figure out how to more quickly illustrate how the students that we're trying to get to diversify the profession are going to have a ladder and ascension into the power of these firms. And I think the other dynamic of that is there's still a huge amount of architecture, and we can talk about community. Most architecture is for the 1%, 2%, 10%, 20%. And so I think we can't bring students in and say, we're going to be all about community, and then you're going to have to go into an internship in a firm that's doing only exclusive homes in Beverly Hills. So I think we have to be very straightforward about the reality of the profession, so that we can engage these diverse students to help us figure out how to rethink it.
We have a few minutes left here, but I want to make sure that everybody had a chance to sort of say something. I would say one thing we have a pretty robust internship program, kind of firm-wide, generally about 5 or 6 interns in each of our offices, if not more in some of the larger offices. But one of the things we've often heard is that students don't feel that they know enough about the economics of architecture. Not like the economics of how much a building costs to put together per se, but the factors and the influences upon that contribute to kind of a site selection, or a zoning amendment, or like why did, you know, how much does it cost to, you know, create a series of fees to do a project? You know, some of the very strange but practical sort of aspects that some of us practice leaders have to contend with on the sidelines is the one thing that we find that the students have such a kind of a sponge-like mentality about learning right now, because they've got great skills coming out of the offices. They've got a very great, strong process coming out of the schools. I mean, and the one thing that they say is, gosh, I wish I understood how this all comes together. Like, now what, right? And I think it has a lot to do with the communities too, because the community development organizations and stuff have a huge impact into kind of where things are happening around our city. So that was just something I thought I would bring up as it relates to what we're hearing in some of our offices.
I think we can use technology, the platforms that we're kind of experimenting on right now to deal with that. I mean, if you look at some of the things you're talking about, I mean, a video that's 2 hours long can demystify some of these things. And I think we kind of think that we've got to go into a incredibly theoretical course on this or that. But I think that in some of these things, very discrete, very direct access to a video library that they're held accountable for within the context of a course, but maybe they view it asynchronously. I think that's ripe for innovation and transformation to get some more of that kind of knowledge into their hands. Thank you.
Greg, I think you're making a very good point. I think especially for students, underrepresented students, financial knowledge could really empower them. And so one of the things, it was actually, and I think it was 2 years ago, an academic summit we had where Sarah mentioned that at Pomona, they require the students to take a real estate development class. So we've now launched, we now have a 3-course professional practice sequence, and we require our students to develop a pro forma as part of the core curriculum. And that was inspired by this group, so.
There was some chat here. I guess you probably, it's to everyone, so you all can see from Heather. Perhaps architecture as a practice is too narrowly defined. Architecture is bigger than buildings. 100% agree. It is, and people like to use the term architect for a lot of things these days. So anyway, Carlo, I don't know what else. We're at 7:30.
Yeah, we want to be very mindful of everybody's time, of course. So I would say that, you know, clearly we can continue in an email chain if we want to, or if you have any questions for us, and if we have questions for you, of course, we will address them. One last thing, we would like for you to let your students know that 2x8 is happening. All of your schools are participating, which is fantastic. So let the students know to attend. It's a virtual experience this year. It's the first time we do something like this. We'll see what happens with it, but it's moving on, and we have actually raised over $20,000 to giving scholarships this year, which is really fantastic, I think. So this is one thing that we can do immediately, basically.
Yeah.
And
just to piggyback off of Carlo, as part of the 2x8 program, in response to basically all of these topics, we'll be actually holding a panel specifically to discuss dismantling racism in pedagogy and practice on November 19th with a very similar cast as we see here, but we want to engage the students directly. So we'll be engaging SoCal student NOMA chapters at the various institutions, and basically moderating a panel discussion with somebody from a historically Black college, as well as Josh Foster, who would represent SoCal NOMA, and also we will get questions directly from students that we will then interrogate you guys with. So we're very much looking forward both to the opening of 2x8, of course, and of course to the subsequent panel discussions, and we hope to see you there.